Welcome to Satsang. Before I start, I'd like to say this because it was on my mind. I'd like to thank you very much for the donations you've been sending, especially the last 2 weeks. And what is wonderful about that is it's not so much the money, it's just that it touches my heart because I see that there's gratitude, giving, of yourself. After all, what is love? Giving and love are both the same. So thank you very much. What I'd like to cover today is a question a lot of people have been asking. And this is it. I get moments of awakening, I get moments of clarity, and then I seem to lose it. Why does this keep happening? I'm going to read you an email that I had from a very beautiful woman, and I'd like you to observe also how she asked the question, she said what she's experienced, and then as she goes on, I'd like you to see how the ego intervenes ever so subtly, and after a while it creates complications. So, and then we'll talk about it after I've read it. Okay. So today's topic is getting to know why the ego intervenes, why it's important that it does so. Not that it's important it does so, but I mean that's what it does until we begin to see its play and then rise above it. Well, this is what she wrote. I have listened to many of your YouTube videos and thank you. I felt so many of the previous teachings and deep work I had experienced over many years were seamlessly tied together, and I had many aha moments and a profound breakthrough. I have awareness of being reconnected. Wow, thank you. Now we continue. Many of my challenges now appear as gifts in getting me to this point. It's amazing how things really were in alignment to get me here. So oddly, my question revolves around what is next and what changes. And I don't seem to have any easy way of asking it, so here goes the following questions. Where do I go from here? How do I move forward to this world? It's a daily moment-by-moment awareness of being as well as being human for me. Should I anticipate everything being rosy? Now that I had really a major shift from where I was, what will that shift do to my human world? And there are a few, but I'd like to address this again later after we've discussed how did the ego intervene in this particular email. Do you have any feelings? Yeah.
Need to know.
The need to know, right, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah. Also, the sense of accomplishing something. Where do I move forward from here? The idea that you can use this now, that you have got some useful stuff that you then can use and move somewhere.
So you see, yeah, this is so interesting, both of you. Okay, but there's more to it. You see, another thing too that we forget is that all the real answers are in being, not in the mind. Albert Einstein said you cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. In the same way, the mind asks questions, but you cannot have the answers by the same mind that created the questions. You see? So we have to go a little deeper, but when I say deeper, I mean actually seeing the obvious. See, there's one thing why the ego intervenes. It is because it's afraid of losing its hold on us. Because you see, what is ego? Okay? Lester Levinson said ego is the belief that you are a separate individual, but I can put it even more simply, he said, it is the word fear. Ego and fear are synonymous. They're both the same. When the ego drops, so does the fear. So I'd like to go into now how fear intervenes, interrupts us when we're actually growing. Why it takes place, why it happens. You see, what we call the being is made up of all the qualities that we want. Love, happiness, joy, peace, security, safety, abundance, and control. The real control is in being. But what happens is, because we believe we are a separate individual, and we feel separated from others, we want to have those qualities on our terms, so we seek them. By seeking those qualities, which are really three, made up of three qualities that the being has in completion, the ego seeks them as the need for approval, the need for safety, and the need for control. Now, if we look at the letter again that she wrote, which is very interesting because apparently she's an intelligent, aware woman, she said, where do I go from here? How do I move forward in this world? Isn't it a seeking more or less of control? It is a daily moment-to-moment awareness of being as well as being human for me. Should I anticipate everything being rosy? Isn't that need for approval? To feel the love, rosy, being happy? You see? So there's these three become so strong in our need to get closer, because they are in being. But the human sees them as a need because it's not expressing its fullness yet. So therefore, even when it has a beautiful moment of realization, there is still the intervening egoic mind saying, oh, okay, so, but what if that happens? Well, how will you handle this? How do you go about it? You see, these things are all answered by being if you just be. But the point is that we do not trust being, because to us, being is so vague, being is so ephemeral. See, if we were to explore, not with words, what I mean is not using deep questions, but actually looking at what is obvious, we will begin to understand everything. What is the most obvious thing that we have? What is the most obvious thing all 7 billion humans have on this earth? They exist. Right? Now, focus on that. You exist. What is it that exists? Who is it that exists? You see, you might say, well, me, okay. And then we go back to, what is this me? You see, then you identify with the body. Did you know that the body changes every 7 years? We have so many different bodies all the time, baby body, teenage body, young body, old body, etc., etc. So, and what about the name? You can change your name. What about personality? That changes too. What about beliefs? They change too. But there's one thing that never changes. Existence itself. You exist. But who is it that exists? See, I get many emails, people saying, Burt, I had a moment where I realized I didn't know who I was. And I got so frightened and I felt so alone. And it says it made me cry all night. It felt as if I was going crazy. But you see, what happens is that we exist, and our greatest glory, our real identity, so to speak, is that we are infinite being. There's no limit to us. But we don't know that, because we see ourselves as aging, changing, etc., etc. Okay. Now, if you say to yourself, I exist, that feels like, but it has no substance, it has nothing in it. Who is it that exists? You see, if you ask yourself who is it that exists, you'll find there is no you, there's just existence appearing as you. That is quite something to actually realize. See? Now when we move into that, we'll see that that very existence is everything that we've ever wanted. Safety, security, happiness, joy, peace, everything is in that being of existing, of being. Because one thing that we do not realize is that existence is doing everything. See, you know, throughout the years, I've realized that there are 3 forms of awakenings. People go through different forms of awakening. The first awakening is when we get interested in spiritual aspects. You know, you get them on the internet, the law of attraction, abundance. These are all beautiful, wonderful, having perfect health, learning about nutrition, learning about the mind, you know, having different beliefs, and so on and on. But then you'll find that the egoic mind is still there, is still playing havoc. You still are subject to these emotions that take over because you are not in touch with the being that you are yet, which gives you all that you really want and are. I hope I'm being clear here. The second stage of awakening, we begin to surrender. We begin to see that there is a higher power, the existence that we are. We might not understand what it is. We might not know what it is. But somehow we begin to have moments when, you know, you had hoped for something, you visualized something, and the next day you get it. Or you feel good, you do something to someone, and immediately, not only you feel good about it, but somehow it gets returned to you. In other words, you are learning more and more and surrender that the more you trust, the more you get out of your one-dimensional being, in this case the ego mind, the more you get out of that, the more expanded you become, the happier and more fruitful you become. And then we move into the third stage of awakening, which is the real awakening. And that's when you realize you're not who you thought you were at all. You are being itself, the infinite, eternal state. You see? Let's take something else which is obvious. Okay, we took existence. You are existing. Now take the word now. You know, when you think of now, was there ever a time when you got out of that now? You see? And then you find, no, feel it. There's no exit to now. Now is forever. Now is eternal. So as you begin to explore this, you will find that all the changes happen within you. Again, we go back to the body changes, everything changes. But you are always now. Because there's another thing about who you think you are. The I am that you are is the now itself. There is no separation between the two. You cannot say, I am being now. Okay? Because the I am of you is always now. Because now and I am are both the same. So at this point, we don't stop identifying with personality and with looks and body and everything else, because that's all part of the package. But the real being is the being. Did you ever have somebody you knew, you loved, and they died, and you see them in the coffin, and all of a sudden you realize, that's not who they are, that's just a shell. And you realize that is not the person. That body was activated by life, by the moment itself. See? So, so here we are beginning to see that we are, what is the word? Ephemeral creature, you know, being not tangible. Yeah, yeah. And you are this moment itself. Well, the moment you realize that, the ego begins to drop. Most of the questions that I get are about fear. How do I overcome fear? So let's talk about that. Well, first of all, the greatest harm you can do is when you try to get rid of fear. Because if you try to get rid of fear, it will grab you even more. You see, the more you fight fear, the worse it gets. Because the fear is the ego part. So when you fight it and you still don't have the faith in the being, it's still not awakened, it is just like trying to destroy yourself, so to speak. You see? In other words, it becomes a paradox. And that's how the suffering, and not only that, but you make it even more real. So how do you deal with fear? Well, we've often said that love is the only thing that works. So you also see that the fear is there because somehow or other you are seeking the being. And let's go back now to what we said before. The qualities of being are everything that we want more than anything. In other words, love, okay? Happiness, peace, everlasting life, security, safety, all the things that we want. But these things are not something. They're not acquired. They're not bought. They are the very nature of being, to be. Okay, not being something, it is being. So when we allow ourselves to be and see that the fear is taking us out of the being because the ego is afraid of losing its hold on us, okay, it makes us seek those qualities, but it wants it on its own terms. Like, for example, the ego wants love desperately, but it wants it on its own terms and it's not willing to give it. So even when it's in a relationship, you see, fear comes in. What if she doesn't love me the way I want her to love me? Or what if I don't deserve her love? Or what if I lose this love? And maybe you have an appointment at 2 o'clock or so and she doesn't appear, or he doesn't appear at 2 o'clock and he's late. Oh my gosh, he's forgotten, he's, blah, blah, blah. So in other words, what we're saying is that even with love or with beautiful qualities, the fear always comes in, but what if? Always there. See? So then what we can do in dealing with fear is to see this. This is so beautiful. And incidentally, this is not my own discovery, although I made a discovery of it, but it was from Lester Levinson that I learned these three. These three is approval, safety, and control are the three that are the qualities of the being, which encompass all the wonderful qualities. But the moment we want them on our own terms, in our own individual way, we cannot have them because the very wanting of them deprives us of them because they are the nature of being. You see? So the moment you want something, you cannot have it because wanting and having are opposites. You see? If you want something that you already are, because in nature you are being, and being are those very qualities. So the moment you want the being, that very wanting means you want it with the ego part, with the egoic mind, with the perception that you have of it as being something. You see, this is why when we seek happiness, we seek it in things. Oh, that's going to make me happy. You see, if I do this, if I do that, I'm going to be happy. Or if I've got lots of money, then I'm going to be happy. Or if I'm in love, then I'm going to be so happy. I feel more complete. But we'll find that no matter what the outside of you gives you on those qualities, it will never fulfill you until you see it first as your very being itself. You see? So this is why when I get so many emails like this, they say, oh, I had a wonderful experience, but there's one thing I want to know. What do I do next? Or, okay, I know I am being, I feel very good, but how do I live everyday life? You see, do you see how subtle the egoic mind is? It is these very questions that the ego comes in and robs you of your peace. Because being is complete. There is nothing for you to do. Nothing, absolutely nothing. It makes every move for you. Everything that you need, everything that you is there. And that's why I called it the third level of awakening. Because it takes us quite a while before we go from the first awakening to the second to the third. The third is actually the most beautiful because you realize you are the being itself. Imagine, just like saying, be still and know I am God. Okay, so far, are there any questions or anything that you'd like to, yeah?
Is not the nature of life duality?
No. The nature of everyday life is duality. Not life itself.
Well, but I mean, I guess because I am here in this body, then I am a
That's
human.
the duality.
I am a human being.
Right.
So, it sounds like it's just a matter of learning to dance together.
Yes. Well, that's what we're doing, you see. The human all the time is seeking the being. If we become aware of that, then what we need to do, and this is where we go into how it works.
So,
we have to love the human so completely because it doesn't know it is being itself. So we accept everything that the being does. We, as a matter of fact, we embrace it and actually welcome everything. Just like, I said before, a woman was very sad, and I said, love the sadness and expand it. And it's okay, and welcome it. And the moment she did that, actually the sadness went away. Yeah, I'm making it very brief. But the point is that the sadness is part of the human wanting something and thinking they don't have it. You see? But when we begin to realize that in the being, we have everything we want.
But it's almost too that we need that reflection.
Yes, we do. When we do it that way, then yes, how it works. So the fear comes from the egoing part, which is the human part. And once we accept the fear as a need for love, that very understanding, we don't fight fear, we don't reject it, we don't get rid of it, we simply see it as, oh my goodness, all the time, what I'm wanting is who I really am, the being. I still don't know what being is because it's so incredibly ephemeral, so all-encompassing. You cannot put your finger on it, but it is all that I am. But if I begin to see that my human part is seeking that all the time, is wanting that all the time, and if I see that and allow it by understanding it, then I have, without wanting it, I can have it. You see? Because the key is, I want to be happy. Remove the want. Have happy. Because it is very simple. Because in being, you are happy. So in other words, what is keeping you from happy is the fear that comes with doubts, with confusion, with questions, with what if, but is that simple? But is it that easy? You see what I mean? But if you remove all that, you are happy. Got it? Yeah.
So the want that separates us, if we have compassion and caring for the one that wants, then it dissolves the duality back into being.
Yes. 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 Yeah. So by bringing the duality into this incident, it was very good. Okay? So by bringing the duality into it, the human and the being is always wanting what you already have in being, but the human doesn't know it, and so it creates more problems by wanting more questions to be answered which cannot be answered because the answers are being.
So then the ego uses that as a secondary stick to beat the heck out of you.
That's right, to beat itself up. Yeah, it wants to beat itself up.
Yes,
that's self-sabotage.
So it creates another good reason to do so, rather than seeing the beauty of this human being struggling to do their best.
Yeah.
And because in that compassion and understanding, the paradox is that the knowing can arise through embracing as opposed through grasping.
Yeah, and that's also beautiful what you just said. The knowing arises from that embracing. Why? Why does the knowing arise from embracing?
Because when you are embracing, it is being that embraces.
Yeah.
Very good. And being is the knower.
Yes.
The being is the knower itself.
And it's the having. Well,
And it's the having. It's the having. Hey, that's wonderful. Right. So that's how it works. So therefore, if fear comes, do not run away from it. Do not try to get rid of it. Do not fight it. Do not resist it at all. I know it's not easy. You know, it takes dedication to actually face the fear. So this is why, you know, you can get in touch with the body. For example, you know, the moment you feel fear, you feel it in your body. You feel it in your chest or your stomach. You take a deep breath and just feel it, be with it. And at that moment, you gather enough strength to be able to be aware of it. It gives you enough courage if you can have that moment of looking that you can actually see. And that very seeing itself brings you to the part where the wanting becomes the having.
So fear itself is the rejection before the actual happening.
Yes,
Like
yes.
It's not even, it's a total fabrication.
It's a total fabrication. As a matter of fact, fear, F-E-A-R, has been said, false evidence appearing real.
But it's
Yes,
almost
indeed.
before
Yeah.
the happening, like it's the fear stops the happening.
Yes,
So it's
yes,
not even,
of course.
It's not even part of the happening.
Yeah, it's always in the future. Fear is always in the future. You see? Even if it's in the past you had a very bad experience. Okay, fine. But the moment the fear comes, the fear is saying, oh, but it's going to happen again. You see what I mean?
It's a projection
It's a
in
projection.
front of you.
Right.
So it's not that it doesn't allow you to be in the moment, it tricks you into thinking it is the moment.
Oh, that's good. That's good. But yeah, then you can say, you know, but I am being now, you know. And the point is, yeah, the fear itself is just like it's I like the explanation, false evidence appearing real, because it is false evidence. It's always something that's going to happen to you, something that's going to act, but it hasn't happened yet. But at the same time, you think it is now, because the fear feels in the body very, very real, very real. The body feels it. I mean, we all experienced great fear, right? Moments of fear. Yeah.
So in that, the body reaction is a now happening, but it's reacting to something that is false. But that nowness that you're feeling, that reaction is now.
Their
So
reaction in the body is now.
Yes.
But that
And
all,
if you stay with it, this is the thoughts that are not now, because
Yes.
I wonder what's going to happen. But what is happening to the body is happening now.
Yeah.
So by taking a deep breath and being with the feeling, it brings enough courage to be here with what is happening, and then you're able to see. You see?
so then all fear, if it's so much in the body, then it must have happened previous. And it's almost like a fear of death, really, is what it is.
Yeah, it's a fear of death. It's a fear of death. Yeah, yeah. It's not that it has happened before, but you see, we've had many lifetimes in different bodies. You are being. Being has no lifetimes. Being is. But the being appears as you and me, as 1 billion other people, 7 billion other people. So as we get being recycled all the time, we carry these memories in our genetic code, in our DNA. The body carries memories. So what happens is that there is always a fear of something ending, death. And it's always death that we actually fear. But when we begin to see that in being, there is no death. But the only way to do it, and we have to go back to you now, that we have to bring it to the present moment. And you bring it to the present moment, the fear now is taking on a sensation in the stomach or chest. So you be with it, you take a deep breath and just be with it only, without a story, because the story is in the future or in the past, but it's never now, the story. So you stay in the body. The moment you stay in the body, then there is enough courage for you to get a moment of clarity. That moment of clarity could bring you out of that fear. And in time, you begin to see that it is truly false evidence appearing real. You see, once we do that, it is the ego that is dying. Fear and ego are synonymous, said Lester Levinson. So that's, that's quite something. Yeah, this is great. Yeah.
What you just said, Burt, about the ego dying. How long does that take?
How long does it take for the ego to die?
Or how many lifetimes does it have?
I think that it is an illusion.
It is an illusion, so therefore there's no time.
There is no time, and it can be dropped like this. I'm not saying that it is easy, but it's simple.
So my question is
it is not easy, but it's simple.
What is the it that's dropping?
What is
it's just words.
No, I know it's words, but what is the what does it? What might it feel like? What?
Yeah, what would it feel like? Okay, let's go.
Well, it would
let's
be joyful.
go. Yeah, let's go into that. We always want to be joyful. We always want to be happy. We always want to be relaxed, right? Because that's who we are. You are at your best when you are relaxed. If you act in a negative way, people look at you and they'll say, "You're not being yourself today." You see? So everybody knows that the positive, the love is our natural state. So when fear comes, immediately you feel discomfort. And it can come even as a doubt, skepticism, cynicism. It can come as a discomfort. It can come as an insecurity. It can come in so many different ways. But if we were to look at it as it's happening, get in touch with the body, feeling it right now, okay? Feel it so that maybe you can give better examples here. Okay, as you allow yourself to feel what is happening in the moment, and it is happening in the moment, you are actually going beyond the story, and the story is what the fear is all about. You see? Because when you feel something in your body is not actually feeling it's feeling the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Like somebody says, tomorrow at dawn we're going to shoot you. And you cannot sleep and everything else. And your body goes, your body is all torn up inside. Okay? But your body is turned up because you can visualize this, you can see the story taking place. You see? But if you can bring it to just a sensation by itself, without a story, without thinking about it, by actually physically being with it, okay? Not what it's about, but it in the moment. At that moment, then, we are able to transcend the fear. Because fear, again, is false evidence. In the moment, fear cannot happen in the moment. You see, the moment, the body reacts to that fear, and it is in the moment, but the fear itself is not the moment. It's a promise of something's going to happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in that moment, that would probably turn the fear into something very exhilarating.
And if you were to say, okay, that's true too. Now, if you have enough courage to actually take a deep breath, stay with the body sensation, this is just to bring you totally here, because the body is always here, always here. It's reacting to what the mind is giving it moment to moment. The body never lies. It is the mind that lies continuously, the egoic mind. So therefore, if we begin to get in touch with that, then we begin to have the courage to look. And we say, oh my goodness, it's the story, that's it. Because already as I accept the moment as it is, I already begin to feel not us caught in it. You see? When a person goes hysterical, berserk, they go crazy, well, what is happening is that they're totally caught in the story. And they're fighting it and they're resisting it. You see?
to just to go from fear to elation, both of those I see as traps, because elation is like, whew, made it, and really, whether the gain or loss are both imposters.
Yes. Gain and loss are imposters.
Are
Yes.
both imposters. So it's not about going to the opposite. It's seeing the falseness of both, so that you can sink into what is now, which has the richness of it all.
Yes. Yes.
It's not...
And the richness, and again we go back to that being, which is complete, which is whole, which is total, which is oneness. You see? And if we start feeling moments of that oneness, which has no ego, because we can dispense with the ego temporarily. We can be egoless, you see. And in that moment of being egoless, we feel such incredible feeling of being, of wholeness. Okay, that in itself brings healing, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, in every sense of the word. We begin to see this is who I am. Now I'm no longer afraid of being nothing, because now I know I am everything. And we begin to see how great we really are.
And being is happening in every moment, regardless of circumstance. So it's not about getting out of anything, because it exists everywhere.
That's
being.
right. Being is being, yeah.
Being is being, so it's not going to that better place.
Being is not a better place. Being is the best.
Indeed. But I guess it's so important to, because when you were explaining that, I was seeing how that's the place where you would recognize all your conditioning, all your
Yes.
beliefs that have been put upon you that you didn't even know you were believing. That you might be
That's
so
what you see,
afraid
the
of.
clarity that comes when the mind is still. When the mind is still, because you are in the moment, totally in the moment. Okay, when the mind is still, it is egoless, and that's when everything becomes clear. And because, you see, the moment the mind is still, the knower, which is the being, knows everything. Now you know that your true identity, which you cannot explain to somebody else, is pure awareness, infinite, eternal. It is joy, it is love itself. But you cannot package it, because it's unlimited, you see?
And you don't need to chase the apparent insights, because that will only take you back into story.
That's right.
If you stay, if you abide in being, the story becomes irrelevant.
That's right. And the moment the story becomes irrelevant, now we really wake up,
Yeah.
you see?
You can't abide in being? How do you abide in being? I mean...
If you're in the story, you can't abide in being.
Even if you're
Yeah.
Yeah,
chase-
no, but I mean abide in being. Being is not something you can abide in. It's
Yeah. Well,
it's-
I know what you're saying. Ramana Maharshi used to say, "Abide in being." It's just words. Though.
well, live through being.
Yeah.
Be through being.
Yeah. Being is being. Yeah. Yeah. It's the point is not to get caught so much in semantics, but
Yeah.
Yes.
just to see that being is being.
You know, this is a little one that helped me a little. I realized that abide and abode are very similar, and in some ways it's like being home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right, being home. It is not like being home, it is being home.
It is that very well said, thank you.
Yeah,
Take out the like.
yeah.
It is
yeah.
being home.
It is being home, yeah, because being is our home,
Yeah.
you see. And this is why Ramana Maharshi used to say that when you realize the truth, there's only being. You see, he called it the self, capital S, but it doesn't matter what you call it. I like the word being because it's so complete. He says, when you realize you are being, he says, you get the last laugh and you say how simple it actually is. And you wonder how you could have been so caught in that darkness. You see? Because the ego is insane. You know, and all the insanity that happens in the world, crime, wars and everything else, is because of this incredible separation when being is all that there is, and being is our home. Being is the Christ or heaven or whatever, the cosmic self, totality, wholeness. Yeah, everything that we want is being. All we want is being.
Isn't that why we're here, though?
That's why we're here.
It's the only reason.
Yeah.
And then when we,
And
if we so get it in this lifetime, then we can just be.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're.
Yes. Well, that is the whole point. This is why we were given a body too, because the body is a wonderful tool. It brings us to the point of actually seeing. You know, it gives us, because it's been said too that people who pass away from a particular lifetime, you know, they don't go and we're always here, but to us they've died. Okay, so what happens is that they might take on a form right away because they want to re-experience what they didn't experience before, until finally they are free, totally free. You see? Yeah. And that's what total liberation is. That's what freedom is. Yeah. I guess we've covered it, haven't we? Wow.
You know.
So back to the question, though, is did we find out where? Well, I guess it was just in thinking that it was something.
Yeah, you see, she raised up other more questions, which I didn't want to keep on reading them because, like for example, I feel like doing things differently because I see things differently. Will I continue to experience the challenges I had yesterday and before, or will the shift change them as well with a lesson learned? What is she seeking there through that question?
Security.
That's right. She's seeking security and control. Very good. See how simple it is? So when we become aware that those questions, we think, oh, I want to go deep, I want to learn, I want to, you know, we kid ourselves. These questions are really an escape. Mm-hmm. But the mind cannot give the answer because the mind itself that is asking the question is not in being. It is the being that is the answer we are seeking. For example, okay, let's talk about safety. What is safety?
Income.
It's the illusion that we are not vulnerable to life.
That's beautiful. Because safety itself is nothing more than being. It has nothing to do whether you have $1 billion or no money at all. You can still feel completely. You feel safe in yourself.
That's confidence, to have that sense of.
Yeah, well, okay, talk about confidence too, talk about courage, talk about whatever positivity. It all comes back to love. Mm-hmm. It is all love, being. Once you have that, once you realize that, you've got all these, all of it. It's a package deal.
It's like it doesn't come up. Like it doesn't come up to question it. It's just.
No, it doesn't come up to question. As long as the mind is questioning, it is creating its own confusion, its own self-sabotage, its own...
It creates its own reason for being.
Yeah, it's creating a reason for being. Oh, that is so beautiful.
Yeah, that is good. Yeah.
Yes, it's creating a reason for being, and there's no reason to be. Being is being.
Yes, that's a.
There's no reason
trick.
to be. There's no a goal to be achieved. There's no somewhere to go. Although there's a journey of the particular soul, body, ego, or whatever, but the being has no journey. Being is. It is our home. It is who we are. You see. So when we say, "Oh, the master," you know, whatever master that was. What is a master? Someone who masters the mind and body, and now they are in being. And they have found liberation, they have found freedom. And that freedom is their true homes, is their joy, you see. I just thought of Lester Levinson. You know, he was so sick. At 42 he had his second coronary, and he had everything wrong with him. And when he looked at himself, he found one thing he missed was happiness. He was never happy. And he went to explore what happiness was. Anyway, to make a long story short, he discovered that happiness is love. But it is not being loved so much, but loving itself. It is because as you give, you get, because there's only being. So if I give to you, I automatically get, because we are one. So you can never be poor, you can never have limitation when you live in being. You see? You know, Sai Baba said one time, he said, if you go in the desert and you know you are being, he said, and you are thirsty, water might come up right from the earth. He said, because everything becomes possible when you live in being. Because there are no needs that you might have. You see? So this is the beautiful thing. This is something that we cannot understand. You know, Jesus said to his disciples, he says, go and preach the word for people who are ready to hear you, to listen. And they said, but we have nothing to carry with us. All we have is the clothes on our back. We cannot give anything. You see? And he says, you have everything that you need. And when you come back, we'll talk about it, so to speak. And they found that they learned by being on themselves. And they said, what if somebody doesn't have a shirt and I have one? And Jesus said, give them that shirt too. He says, because the moment you give it, he says,
you're taken care of.
You're also okay. That's
yeah.
right. Yeah. See, that's what love is, you know.
I'm just looking at something it seems that in some ways love isn't a giving, love is getting out of the way of life giving. So it's not really you saying, look at this great gift I have for you. It's actually when you're so thin that your natural being of joyful life pours out of you.
That's right. And you're actually giving to yourself too. Yeah. Incidentally, I have here, I kept it because I thought, this is so beautiful. This is something that Lester wrote. And can I read it to you?
Sure.
Now he says, now the very highest state is simply beingness. And if we could only be, just be, we could see our infinity. We would see that there are no limitations. We would see that we are all the all. We would be in a perfectly satiated, permanent, changeless state. And it is not a nothingness. It is not a boredom. It is an allness, an everythingness, a total satiation that is eternal. You will never, never lose your individuality. Not personal individuality he is talking, but you as I am, the I am that you are. You'll never lose that. Yeah, it will never leave you. It will expand. What happens as you remember what you are is that you'll begin to see that others are you, that you are me, that you are now and always have been gloriously infinite. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what being is, you know. So I'm hoping that when people keep asking me questions about, well, I've had this moment and then I lost it, okay, we know why we lose it. Because the ego comes in with a what if, but, you see, and we're caught without realizing that we're caught. Because whatever the mind thinks, we think we are thinking. It thinks what we are, in other words.
Yes.
Thought is thought. It's a movement, it's
thought.
an impression. You see? Right. But if we can see beyond the thought and be, and that's why moments of stillness can bring you all the wisdom you need, you know.
So when a question arises, as you might want to speak, just without seeking the answer, being with the question without seeking could be a way of stopping and settling on that. And
That's
then,
true too. You can do that too. If you actually look at the question without reaching for an answer, but really understanding what you are asking, you actually look at it.
yes,
You see?
where the asking comes from, because
Yes.
below
Yeah.
all, everything is being. So we
Yeah.
can see, could sometimes see where the question had secretly hooked onto, as it were,
Yes.
or just being with it. It seems like, without even figuring it out, that being can just expose all of that.
Yes. Expose all of it, because it is the knower. You know, the moment we start feeling the being, that's why meditation. But meditation is not something you do, you just sit
Yes.
and be, you know. One time I said to a friend, she said, well, what do you do? We were over in Jericho, and I said, well, look at that tree out there. And I said, just sit and keep looking at this tree. Just keep looking at it. And she did for about 20 minutes. And she had wonderful experience. She couldn't stop telling me what happened, as if the tree spoke to her. You see? But she was able to look at the tree and not think anything about it, without calling it Tree.
Right.
Just look at it as it is. And the moment you look at something as it actually is, which is seeing the obvious, that's the being coming alive in you. You know, sometimes you can go on the beach and you look at the sky and you see the clouds, and you just keep looking at the sky, at the clouds moving. You keep watching them. And there is a silence that comes to you, a feeling that comes to you, you see? Because at that moment you're transcending thought, you're transcending story. You're going into being, you see, and being is complete. Once being becomes alive in you, then there's nothing you need to know. And you don't know it because you've read it, you know it beyond the shadow of a doubt. You see, because you know you exist and you know you're always now. So you got nothing to worry about. Because nothing can happen to you, you see? Yeah. No. Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the sharing. Okay. Namaste.